Devil Venerable also wants to know. Chapter 5. Brilliant Plan, Venerable 1. Wenren he was an indifferent person. The book's description of him was that he had no eyes for anyone on earth except Bailey Qingmiao. He would take the moon and the stars from the heavens for Bailey Qingmiao. A character like that attracted hordes of fans, and every time there was a scene in which he was alone with the female protagonist, the readers would all be engrossed and cheering them on. One of their typical interactions was on the night when Wenzhao was to be married to the master of the Xiling Pavilion. Bailey Qingmiao was seriously injured and was accompanied by Wenren he as she gazed at the night sky filled with stars. She pointed at the constellation of the cowherd and weaver girl that were separated by the Milky Way and said, "Such a happy couple, why did they need to be torn apart?" As she spoke, a tear streaked down her pale face. The bright-eyed and smiling young girl from the beginning had long since vanished. Even though cultivators almost never aged after the foundation establishment stage, she still looked the same as she was at the age of 18, but her heart had grown much older. Upon hearing this, Wenren he raised a hand to cover Bailey Qingmiao's eyes and said, "Before I become a god, don't look at the stars." "Why?" Bailey Qingmiao said in confusion. "It's said that when a cultivator ascends to godhood, they can change the stars and galaxies to their liking. I will bring the cowherd star to the other side of the Milky Way." Bailey Qingmiao was amused and nodded. "Then, until you become a god, I won't look at the night sky again." In the end Wenren he died without being able to ascend to godhood, but he fulfilled his promise to Bailey Qingmiao nonetheless. Bailey Qingmiao was able to regain her divinity thanks to the arrangements Wenren he had made prior to his death. In the moment she merged with her divinity, the heavens trembled and the stars shifted, and the cowherd and weaver girl were brought to each other's sides. The power unleashed by the changing stars instantly turned a continent into an ocean. This was the power of a primordial god. The moment the goddess of calamities reclaimed her place, chaos was unleashed across the world. When Bailey Qingmiao came back to her senses and saw that she had destroyed an entire continent, she thought back to her Shixing's teachings and the words of that ascended god in her past life. She didn't want to be a god and have her powers disrupt the stars so casually, so she abandoned her divinity. However, the cowherd and weaver girl didn't return to their original places and stayed together just like the two protagonists in the end. With regards to this plotline, the readers discussed it like crazy that it was Wenren he's love for the female lead even after his own death. Saying that if this man wanted to pamper someone, he would really go to any lengths and that he wouldn't let her suffer any grievance even if he died, he would be there for her until the very end. Wenren he didn't really feel anything when he read this part and the discussion about it because he knew how fickle he really was. Xianyuan sect had countless subordinates who would wholeheartedly dedicate themselves to him, but Wenren he never paid them any mind. He knew this dedication was built on the power he possessed that could crush all opposition. If someone else had the same power, those people would show the same kind of devotion to them. The target of this devotion wasn't Wenren he himself but the strength of a Mahayana stage cultivator. As for familial bonds, Wenren he had already set them aside when he entered the Dao. 300 years had passed, and there was no longer anyone with his bloodline left on the earth. What he had with Bailey Qingmiao was the workings of karma and heavenly law, and couldn't be counted as love. He was alone in this world, and there was nothing in the world that would tie him to it after he left. Just that after reading that book, an odd feeling had grown inside of him towards Yin Hanjiang. Yin Hanjiang owed Ren Wen he for saving his life, for being raised by him and for being taught by him. After his death, whether Yin Hanjiang sought vengeance for him or carried out his final wishes, it was all what he naturally ought to do. Even if his body was broken and his bones were shattered for Wenren he, it would be reasonable. But why did Yin Hanjiang had to choose such a wretched way to show his devotion? While reading, Wenren he had never thought that Yin Hanjiang would be the ghost mask, and when the truth was revealed, the moment when the female lead saw the mask in Yin Hanjiang's bundle, it wasn't just Bailey Qingmiao who was shocked. Wenren he was also shaken by the revelation. At one point in the book, one of the female villains got a magic item that could change one's appearance in a way that was undetectable by others. She took on Bailey King Miao's appearance to trick He Wenzhou, but she got captured by Yin Hanjiang instead. Without a protagonist's plot armor, she naturally got refined into an everlasting lamp. Yin Hanjiang had taken off the ghost mask and went to Wenrenhe's cenotaph. Lighting the everlasting lamp, he entered the tomb. Clutching Wenrenhe's black robe that was covered with dark gold patterns, he peacefully closed his eyes. That sentence sent a chill through Wenrenhe. It seemed as though the next moment that while hugging Wenrenhe's robes, Yin Hanjiang would self-destruct his nascent soul to kill himself. However, at that point, the tracking device that Yin Hanjiang had placed on the female lead lit up. He saw that she was still alive and had run into trouble again. Yin Hanjiang stared at the image of her that was displayed in the air before him, tilting his head slightly. Then he rubbed his cheek along Wenrenhe's robe, folded it and replaced it neatly in the tomb. He quietly walked out of the tomb. Without using spiritual energy to protect his hand, he smothered the everlasting lamp with his palm. Next, with a sweep of his arm, it shattered against a nearby boulder, shards scattering across the ground, lamp oil slowly spilling into the dirt. Ha 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 ha. Yin Hanjiang looked at his burned palm and suddenly burst into laughter. As the laughter went on, he placed a hand over his mouth, making painful, muffled noises, as if it was taking all the strength he had to restrain his emotions. He lowered his head, staying that way until the stars rose in the sky. At the darkest moment before daybreak, Yin Hanjiang lifted his head and placed the ghost mask on his face. From behind the mask came words through gritted teeth. Bai. Li. Qing. Miao. Those who read this section felt that it was creepy, but Wenrenhe, as one of those readers, had an inexplicable feeling that he was the hidden protagonist of the story. He could accept Yin Hanjiang dying for him, but he was unable to understand why would Yin Hanjiang went insane because of him. To go from perfect calm to extreme mania, what kind of suffering did he go through? Yin Hanjiang's face rubbing against his robe was like as if he was rubbing against his heart. Wenrenhe looked up from the book to gaze at Yin Hanjiang and felt like he was properly seeing this subordinate of his for the first time. He felt like what he had done for Yin Hanjiang wasn't worth such heartfelt repayment, so he ought to treat Yin Hanjiang a little better. Xu Yanyan wasn't planning to suck He Wenzhou into an empty husk this time around and was even going to use her techniques to help him improve in cultivation, so he wouldn't need the snow flame anymore. It was a perfect chance to use it for Yin Hanjiang. Wenrenhe had been the Xianyuan sect master for many years and had obtained quite a large collection. He dug around in his kinkan sleeve and gave Bailey Qingmiao some materials, pills, and magic items that were suitable for her cultivation stage, with the addition of a flame feather cloak to protect her from the cold air of the ice plains, so the protagonist wouldn't freeze to death. This. I can't take all this. Bailey Qingmiao looked at the items that were rapidly piling into a small mound, her face reddening as she waved her hands. Wenrenhe also took out a simple hairpin, which was actually a storage item suitable for holding the things he had provided. Giving Bailey Qingmiao no opportunity to refuse the gifts, he grabbed Yin Hanjiang and left. Bailey Qingmiao held the hairpin in her hand and spaced out for a bit, staring at the sky in the direction Wenrenhe had disappeared. With a stamp of her foot, she said, "Shikshan. Miss Xu." She quickly stored all the gifts in the jade hairpin, placed it inside her robe, and flew at a slow pace toward Shangqing sect. Disciples leaving Shangqing sect all took with them an emergency talisman. If they shattered the jade talisman, nearby disciples would be alerted to come and save them. Bailey Qingmiao could have used this method to call for help, but these talismans were meant to be used in matters of life and death, not whenever one wanted. If she really broke one and called over a group of disciples only for it to turn out to be not an urgent matter, she would earn the disapproval of her seniors. After nascent soul stage, she would be able to create her own communication talismans, but Bailey Qingmiao hadn't reached that stage yet, so she had to go up the mountain herself. Meanwhile, Xu Yanyan slept on a straw bed, her face rosy and one of her shoulders bared. He Wenzhou, who was standing next to the bed with his shirt open, spaced out for a moment, then pulled a simple blanket over Xu Yanyan, but his action woke her up. Xu Yanyan opened her eyes, and upon meeting He Wenzhou's eyes, her face reddened and she grabbed her clothes and pulled them over herself carelessly. She wrung her hands and said in a soft voice, "Young Master He, you don't need to worry. I know you have feelings for Miss Bailey. This was unintentional. I had been injured, so young Master He was just helping me to recover." He Wenzhou was perfectly clear whether or not it had been to help her recover. He stared at Xu Yanyan, simultaneously wondering how he could have done something like this and reminiscing over how it had felt as he had bedded her. There was even a bit of tenderness in his eyes as he looked towards her. I'll help you buy a house. This place is too run down. It's not a suitable place to live," He Wenzhou said dully. Xu Yanyan cursed men out in her mind a few times, but outwardly, she shook her head with a slight smile. "Young Master He, are you treating me as a prostitute? If I had wanted to sell my body, why would I wait until now?" He Wenzhou stared dumbly for a few more moments. "I am a lowly woman, and I do not mind how others see me. But young Master He is such a noble character. How could he be a man who pays for pleasure?" Xu Yanyan said, turning the subject around as she looked sadly at He Wenzhou. She wouldn't accept the money not only because of her own morals but out of concern for He Wenzhou. Such a thoughtful and considerate person. "But I truly have disrespected you, miss." He Wenzhou reached out and brushed a strand of Xu Yanyan's hair back behind her ear. He accidentally touched her blushing cheek and his heart skipped a beat. Xu Yanyan smiled warmly. "Isn't it often mentioned in stories that one should give oneself to repay a life debt? Young Master He is a noble hero. I am honored to be with you." Her words gradually smoothed away He Wenzhou's regrets. He thought about all the times he'd helped Miss Xu. This woman didn't have many capabilities and could probably only use this method to repay him. Besides, back then, with her warm and supple body in his lap and her wholehearted trust in him, what man would be able to hold back? And it's not like she was a woman from a brothel. They both had feelings for each other, so wasn't it a good thing? The only problem was Bailey Qingmiao. What should he do about her? But wasn't the fact that the situation had progressed this far because of Bailey Qingmiao taking her sweet time? If she came back earlier, he wouldn't have had to forego propriety with this woman in order to save her. The more He Wenzhou thought, the more he felt that he didn't do anything wrong. He just didn't know how he would explain it to his beloved Shimei. He really did like Bailey Qingmiao. They were childhood friends and He Wenzhou had taken care of her since she was just a 7 or 8-year-old child. He had watched her grow from a little girl plump with baby fat to a beautiful young woman. Xu Yanyan couldn't come between such deep feelings. Xu Yanyan didn't want to get between them either. She placed a soft hand on He Wenzhou's shoulder and said understandingly, "Worry not, young master. This matter stays between you and me. No one else will hear of it. Right? Wasn't it fine as long as no one else knew?" Miss Xu looked like a clever maiden, she would understand. With his inner conflict now resolved, He Wenzhou embraced Xu Yanyan. Xu Yanyan, after arranging her clothes properly, fell asleep again and acted like she'd been put through too much and was exhausted. Looking at her sleeping face, He Wenzhou in the end still felt his heart move for her. After staring for a moment, He Wenzhou remembered that he had violated his body of true yang. His teacher always reminded them that they should avoid dual cultivating with anyone until they reached nascent soul stage or they could easily harm their cultivation. He Wenzhou hurriedly checked himself over and found that his cultivation had not weakened and instead risen significantly, from the 7th level of core formation stage right to the 9th. Xu Yanyan had cultivated to the 6th level of void boundary, though this method, raising a core formation stage junior's level, was as easy as breathing for her. She had also absorbed the lightning energy from inside He Wenzeo's body and that mysterious power he possessed, so she benefited quite a lot herself. She was just waiting for He Wenzeo to go so she could cultivate. Why would his cultivation increase? He Wenzeo was very confused. He looked at Xu Yanyan and thought back to a book he had read in the sect library on dual cultivation. At the time, he had discovered that he was in love with his Shimei, so he went looking for methods of dual cultivating. That book had also said that one should not dual cultivate before nascent soul stage but with two exceptions, those with a 9-yang body and a 9-yin body. If a woman with a 9-yin body were to dual cultivate with a man, even if she was just an ordinary person, she could still raise their cultivation and provide many benefits. Could Miss Xu have a 9-yin body? While He Wenzeo was letting his thoughts wander, Bailey Qingmiao finally arrived with Yao Shixin. "Sorry I was late, Shixin," she said, out of breath. He Wenzeo patted her head and said, "No worries, Shimei. Miss Xu is already okay." As it turned out, Yao Shixin made this trip for no reason. Seeing Xu Yanyan sleeping on the bed with a rosy complexion, Yao Shixin felt suspicious and said, "How did she recover?" He Wenzeo didn't want him to check Xu Yanyan and said in a low voice, "We shouldn't talk here, let's go outside first." They left the thatch hut. Only then did He Wenzeo explain that the situation had been urgent and Miss Xu had been coughing up blood and near death, so he helped her take some medicine of the kind cultivators used. He even took out his pill bottle to show that it was missing one pill. Can an ordinary person endure that kind of medicine? Yao Shixin sniffed at the pill bottle. These pills are for foundation establishment cultivators. An ordinary person's meridians wouldn't be able to bear such strong spiritual energy. Their meridians would rupture and they'd die. "I used my spiritual qi to help her absorb it," He Wenzeo said, putting it simply. But, Yao Vendan thought about the procedure to help someone absorb medicine. He mainly studied refining medicinal elixirs and knew clearly that this procedure required skin-to-skin contact. "But what?" Bailey Qingmiao said innocently. She was young and she hadn't learned about this yet. He Wenzeo fixed his gaze on Yao Vendan. Yao Vendan got the hint and said, "Well, I was just worried Shixin didn't understand enough about medicine and hadn't treated her properly. But I see now that Miss Xu is completely healed, so there's nothing to worry about now." Bailey Qingmiao relaxed at that and wanted to go see Miss Xu. He Wenzeo had said that any danger was past and an unmarried man and woman shouldn't be together alone, so he let Bailey Qingmiao go in on her own. Once she entered the house, Yao Vendan raised an eyebrow and elbowed He Wenzeo. He said with a smirk, "Shixin, have you done something improper?" "The situation was urgent, so I had to do something on the spot. I covered my eyes all the while," He Wenzeo said. He acted exceedingly righteous. Yao Vendan spoke with some lingering doubt, "Then why didn't you tell Shimei earlier?" He Wenzeo sighed and shook his head. "It's not like you don't know Shimei's attitude. She even raised a fuss when Lu Shimei came to me to ask about a technique. I'm everyone's senior, it's my duty to help my juniors with their cultivation. When our master is busy with other things, it's my duty to provide guidance. I even taught you your first techniques. Why wouldn't I help Lu Shimei?" "That's all true," Yao Vendan said. "Bailey Qingmiao is good in so many aspects, just that she gets jealous too easily." "That's right. And it wouldn't be right to Miss Xu if others were to know, so it's better to let the matter drop here. A human life is invaluable. What I did is still a good deed." Yao Vendan bought He Wenzeo's words. After Bailey Qingmiao confirmed that Xu Yanyan was fine, she left the hut completely oblivious. Then they returned to Shangqing sect. After they left, Xu Yanyan got up, rubbed at her skin and kicked the straw bed as she exclaimed, "This straw is too prickly. How can anyone sleep on these? Just now, why didn't you tell Bailey Qingmiao what you and He Wenzeo did?" a voice spoke in the thatch hut. Xu Yanyan looked up and saw that the Venerable One and Protector Yin had appeared in the hut at some point. She chuckled and said, "Venerable One, you're a hard-hearted man, you don't know anything about women. How could you understand how those self-important false gentlemen think? Those men will say all the sweet words for free while they're in bed, but after they put their clothes back on, they'll act like they don't know you. If I tell her about it, the next day he Wenzhao would have said that I'd bewitched him and blamed me for everything." Wenren he thought about it. It really did happen like that in the book. He Wenzhao stuck to the story that Xu Yanyan had abducted him and there was no way he could fight off the right protector of a demonic sect. "Then when will you tell her?" Wenren he asked. He wanted Bailey Qingmiao to hurry up and see He Wenzhao's true face as soon as possible so that she could start cultivating the path of indifference and ascend. After she successfully merged with her divine essence, Wenren he could consider his debt repaid. "We need to wait a while," Xu Yanyan said, leaning against a wall. "After He Wenzhao leaves, it'll only be a few days before he comes looking for me again. After getting a taste, what man wouldn't want a second? And I can even help his cultivation improve. As time passes and things develop, he really won't be able to get me out of his head. And one time might have been coercion, but could a second and the third also be coercion? In the future, even if he tries to make excuses, he wouldn't be able to gloss over all of that." She frowned. "Though, didn't the Venerable One want me to win over He Wenzhao and play the long game, to get information about the Great Sect War?" Wenren he nodded. "That's also necessary. But when it comes to Bailey Qingmiao, it's better to have her sooner lose hope, leave her sect and switch to cultivating the path of indifference." Huh? Xu Yanyan didn't get it. What did the Venerable One mean by that? If he was interested in Bailey Qingmiao, he ought to get her to betray her sect and go down the demonic path, then find some way to make her one of his. Why the path of indifference? "Just do what you're supposed to," Wenren he said. "Then I need a few subordinates to lure away Bailey Qingmiao to give He Wenzhao more chances. Every time they leave the mountain they're joined at the hip. It's way too hard to find an opportunity." "No need. I'll keep Bailey Qingmiao away for a few days," Wenren he said. You will personally, again?" Xu Yanyan's expression stiffened. Wenren he raised an eyebrow. "Is there a problem?" "Not at all," Xu Yanyan said with a weak laugh. Yin Hanjiang saw that she didn't trust Wenren he and said unhappily, "The Venerable One sent Bailey Qingmiao to retrieve the snow flame. We'll be able to obtain a treasure and make it easy for you to seduce He Wenzhao at the same time. It's killing two birds with one stone." "So that's it?" Xu Yanyan's respect grew and she knelt on one knee. "Brilliant plan, Venerable One." Wenren he nodded expressionlessly. End chapter. Devil Venerable also wants to know. Chapter 6, 1,000-Mile Ice Plains. Bailey Qingmiao didn't feel comfortable taking the pile of treasures that Wenren he had left her. She returned to Shangqing sect and after meditating for a night, she found that her level had actually increased from the second level of foundation establishment all the way to the seventh, which was an abnormally huge leap. She assumed it was due to the guidance of those two experts. Bailey Qingmiao had been taught since childhood that the gratitude of a drop of water should be repaid by a spring. She couldn't accept such a benefit for free, so she met with her mentor and said she wanted to leave the mountain to gain experience. Bailey Qingmiao's mentor Elder Qingrong was a female cultivator and most of the female disciples in the sect were under her. Shangqing sect didn't forbid its disciples from dual cultivating and just warned them that dual cultivation should only be done after the nascent soul stage. The first reason was to give irresolute disciples something to look forward to, as if someone had a goal, they would put out more effort. The second reason was that after nascent soul stage, a cultivator's emotional maturity would rise and the impulses of youth would be weakened. Only true and deep desires would remain. So, it was also to help disciples know their own hearts, so they wouldn't sabotage themselves while their cultivation was still low. The Qing sect believed that it was better to restrict something than to forbid it. Instead of banning disciples from romantic relations, it was better to properly guide them and for them to avoid developing rebellious mentality. This regulation worked quite well. Some disciples dedicated themselves to cultivating hard so they could be together properly with the person they loved, contributing to the positive atmosphere throughout the whole sect. Upon hearing that her favorite young disciple had resolved to set out alone to train, Elder Qing showed a gratified smile. She patted Bailey King Miao's hand and said warmly, "And I was worried that you were too reluctant to leave your shikshan to travel alone." "Ah! Shifu," Bailey Qing Miao blushed, hugging Elder King Grong's arm. Elder Qing saw that her young disciple had finally grown up and felt relieved. She nodded and said, "It's good that you're motivated. You are a rare talent. If I hadn't held you back then, thinking that it was too early, you probably would have built your foundation at 12 or 13 years old. After foundation establishment, your body won't grow until nascent soul stage. I'm sure you wouldn't have wanted to have a 12 or 13-year-old body for the next 100 years of cultivation, right?" Bailey Qing Miao was a bit embarrassed. She had indeed been young back then and didn't understand anything. If she remained looking like a 12 or 13 years old and with her shikshan taking her places, they would look like a father with his daughter. That would be awful. Elder Qing told Bailey Qing Miao that she shouldn't go anywhere too dangerous, and to immediately break her jade messaging talisman if she ran into trouble, to think before acting and not to show off. After cautioning her on a great many things, she also gave her a protective magic item which could be used to block one full power attack from a deity transformation stage cultivator. After she felt she had covered everything, she finally sent Bailey Qing Miao with her own seal down to the administration hall to make a record. There were many disciples in Shangqing sect and it was necessary to have a clear record of everything. Based on prior records, these kinds of trips usually lasted for half a year up to a full year. If Bailey Qing Miao was not back by that time, the elders would set out to find her whereabouts, so it was also for the disciples' safety. He Wenzhao was the head disciple, so he held several posts at the administration hall. He was currently on duty, and when he received Bailey King Miao's seal of authorization, he stared at her for a moment. "Shimei, you want to leave the mountain alone?" "Yeah, I can't be Shikshan's shadow forever," Bailey Qing Miao said with a smile. "I want to quickly reach nascent soul stage, so I can slay monsters and defeat evil alongside Shikshan, and become renowned in the cultivation world." "Is that so?" "Good, that's good." He Wenzhao had been having erotic dreams all night and was a bit distracted. His mind went blank. He originally felt a bit guilty when he saw his Shimei, but when he heard that she wanted to leave, he didn't feel reluctant about it and actually felt a bit more at ease. Bailey Qing Miao didn't notice He Wenzhao's inattentiveness. After making her record, she lit a soul lamp, which was what all traveling disciples were meant to do. If something happened to them, the lamp would go out and people at Shangqing sect would know immediately. After reluctantly bidding farewell to He Wenzhao, Bailey Qing Miao left the mountain and came to the tea house where she had previously met Wenren He. Wenren He had already made the arrangements with Bailey Qing Miao. Seeing that she had arrived, he nodded and said, "You start flying, we'll catch up later." At Bailey King Miao's speed, it would take at least 7 days to get to the ice plains. Yin Hanjiang could get there in 4 hours, and Wenren He in less than 10 minutes. "I'd rather return these things to you. It's not right for me to take them." Bailey Qing Miao took off the storage hairpin and placed it on the table. "I've kept the flame feather cloak to protect myself in the ice plains. Due to Senior's guidance, I've risen much in cultivation. Since you've already given me something, it's only natural that I complete a task for you. I can't accept more on top of that." Wenren He raised an eyebrow. "All things are guided by karma, and the things I've given you are also due to that. You're just being repaid, not incurring a debt, so don't be concerned." "Oh," Bailey Qing Miao said, surprised. I have a karmic connection to you, senior. But I grew up at Shangqing sect. I've never met you before. Karmic relations are not limited to this life, and not necessarily incurred by you. They may be from past lives or your blood relatives, Wenren he said. I'm not only going to give you these, I'm going to assist your cultivation, help you become a god, help you realize all your desires. Bailey Qingmiao tugged at her sash and said bashfully, I don't dare think about becoming a god, but I do have a desire. I want to quickly reach nascent soul, so I can. She trailed off midway, but Wenren he could guess what she was going to say. Disappointed but unable to do anything about it, he gulped down a mouthful of ordinary tea without a hint of spiritual energy and waved her off. You get going. We'll meet at the entrance to the 1,000-mile ice plains in 7 days. Okay. Bailey Qingmiao left the restaurant, leaving the hairpin on the table. After she left, Yin Hanjiang used his sword to draw an array in the air, casting a simple illusion around the two of them. Anyone looking from the outside would see the two of them sipping tea and eating while chatting idly, while they could do whatever they wanted within the illusion. Wenren he frowned and said, Protector Yin, what about you? What's your desire? This subordinate is the Venerable One's sword. While the sword exists, I exist. When the sword breaks, I die, Yin Hanjiang said. He didn't even blink, seeming to say these words instinctively without thinking about them, like he had replayed them many times in his heart and it had already become an obsession. You certainly are boring. Xu Yanyan walked out of a corner. Leaning against Yin Hanjiang's shoulder, she said, a high position, unmatched power, good-looking men I mean women, which one of these wouldn't be someone's desire? Am I not right, Venerable One? Wenren he said expressionlessly, I've never thought about it. Xu Yanyan. Wenren he and Yin Hanjiang were like two lumps of steel, and it brought an unhappy memory to Xu Yanyan's mind. It was 80 years ago when Wenren he and Yin Hanjiang fought their way into the main hall of Xianyuan sect, and Wenren he dueled the old sect master, killing him after 3 days and nights of combat. Yin Hanjiang stayed beside him for all those while, preventing anyone else from approaching near Wenren he. Yin Hanjiang was only at the first level of body unity level, but he wielded a demonic sword which he had forcibly fused with, and could unleash a frightening amount of power in an instant. He would kill man or god if they got in his way, and many void boundary experts were too scared to approach this mere body unity stage opponent. But demonic cultivators didn't just fight head-on but deployed quite a number of diverse methods. Hall Master Yuan had Xu Yanyan go up and seduce Yin Hanjiang. She wasn't just a pretty face. If a void boundary expert of her kind were to unleash all her charms, anyone under void boundary stage, no matter if male or female, old or young, would all become Xu Yanyan's servants, and even men above void boundary would have a hard time resisting. Dealing with a body unity stage opponent should have been a piece of cake. So, Xu Yanyan approached Yin Hanjiang with full confidence and got several of her teeth knocked out by Yin Hanjiang. For over a year, her teeth were full of gaps and she couldn't even talk properly. It wasn't until Wenren he reinstated the key sect members into their previous positions that she dared to heal them. That battle essentially gave Xu Yanyan a healthy fear of Wenren he and Yin Hanjiang. They seemed to have no feelings. Wenren he cultivated the path of slaughter, and when he saw a beautiful woman, his first thought would be what kind of difference there was to fight a woman versus a man. And as for Yin Hanjiang, he actually seemed to deeply believe he was an ice-cold sword, blind and heartless, not caring if what was in front of him was a man, woman, or beast. He only cared about Wenren he. In Yin Hanjiang's world there was only Wenren he and not Wenren he, and Xu Yanyan was under the category of not Wenren he. Over 80 years had passed, but still, whenever Xu Yanyan saw Yin Hanjiang, her teeth would ache. This man nearly became her inner demon. But she was a sensible woman who rose to challenges, so how could she let something like this hold her back? Just as Wenren he assumed, the loyalty of his subordinates was dependent on his own overwhelming power, but they constantly desired to drag him down from that altar. Xu Yanyan was that kind of ambitious woman. She walked in front of Wenren, her voice soft like an enticement from the abyss. "Venerable One, you already have power and status, so don't you want something more? That Bailey Qing Miao is such a good innocent girl. Should this subordinate coax her to go to your side on your behalf?" Unbeknownst to Xu Yanyan, when she said these words, Yin Hanjiang's face paled and he stiffened against the wall, like an emotionless puppet. Xu Yanyan knew she didn't have the power to seduce the Venerable One, but that didn't matter. As long as Wenren's heart could be tempted, he would lower his defenses, and she could take advantage of that. "Xu Yanyan," Wenren placed his palm on Xu Yanyan's head, but the action was without a slight hint of warmth, and the pressure was as if he was looking to crush Xu Yanyan's skull with one hand. "I approve of my subordinates being ambitious, and therefore allow you to develop. I also don't mind about you placing your weird notions on me." The Venerable One is magnanimous." Xu Yanyan was too scared to even breathe. "But, don't overestimate yourself," Wenren said in a heavier voice. "Use your ambition for productive things. I'm still looking forward to the Great Sect War as a chance to increase my cultivation. In the path of slaughter, one's cultivation advanced in combat. At Wenren's current stage, mortal warfare could not have any effect on him. Only a war that affected the entire cultivation world would suffice. The righteous sects were taking the offensive this time, and Wenren planned to use it as an opportunity to break through the next cultivation stage." Yes, Xu Yanyan said as she felt a sharp pain on her head. Several droplets of warm blood trickled down her forehead. Her newly devised scheme completely dissipated from her mind. When Wenren saw that she was sufficiently taught her lesson, he released her. Yin Hanjiang handed over a handkerchief which Wenren used to wipe the blood from his fingertips before tossing it on the floor. Xu Yanyan didn't dare to wipe her blood and said with it still dripping down her face, "This subordinate will put every effort towards getting information. The day the Venerable One returns from the 1,000-mile ice plains will be the day the Great Sect War begins." "One more thing," Wenren said. "Do your best to make He Wenzhou so obsessed with you. I want Bailey Qing Miao to give up on that man." "Understood." Xu Yanyan bowed her head, looking like a female ghost with her hair loose. After waiting for a while and hearing nothing more, she lifted her head and found that the two men had left. She plopped down on the floor in a cold sweat, hand over her heart. After she treated her injuries, she saw from the second floor how He Wenzhou was walking by below, going in the direction of her home. Xu Yanyan chuckled coldly. Men, so impatient. Your little Shimei had just left and here you are already, can't even wait a few days." But these kinds of men still gave her a sense of accomplishment. As for the Venerable One and his left protector, Xu Yanyan shook her head, chased away the memories of her painful experience from her mind, and focused her attention on He Wenzhou. ******. Wenren brought Yin Hanjiang to the entrance of the 1,000-mile ice plains. Seeing Yin Hanjiang was very pale, he grasped his hand and found that it felt like that of a frozen corpse. "It's better if I enter alone," he said. "Your body is chilled and can't take the cold air. Wait for me at the entrance." Yin Hanjiang looked towards the boundless expanse of ice and shook his head. It's been said that this place was extremely dangerous, where wandering immortals are secluded. This subordinate insists on following the Venerable One. "I order you to wait here," Wenren said. "This subordinate does not wish to deceive the Venerable One. When the Venerable One goes, this subordinate will follow." He was stubborn like an unbending sword, and his honesty actually managed to move Wenren. Wenren sliced open his wrist with a finger and brought it in front of Yin Hanjiang. The path of slaughter may be rejected by the righteous sects, but it is a path of true yang. The hot blood of combat, the stirring of emotions, the ruthless spirit of hundreds or thousands of men meeting in battle that leads even vengeful ghosts to keep their distance, All fills this Venerable One's blood with Yang energy. If you drink this blood, this Venerable One's power will be able to protect you on your way through the ice plains. Venerable One, you're hurt. This subordinate isn't worthy, a hint of pain showed in the depths of Yin Hanjiang's emotionless eyes. That demonic sword is associated with coldness and Yin energy. Do you want this Venerable One to have to save you in the ice plains because you cannot bring out the full power of merging with the sword? Besides, whether or not you're worthy is up to this Venerable One. What right do you have to decide that you're unworthy? Wenren he said. If you're not willing, this Venerable One will seal your powers and leave you at the ice plains entrance. Crimson blood dripped slowly from Wenren he's wrist. Yin Hanjiang shut his eyes in pain for a moment, then opened them. He gritted his teeth, then brought his lips to Wenren he's wrist and sipped a mouthful of warm blood. A current of warmth flowed into Yin Hanjiang's danshan. Wenren he used spiritual energy to stop the flow of blood, then he squeezed Yin Hanjiang's finger. When he felt that it was finally gaining some warmth, he nodded in satisfaction. Yin Hanjiang's expression looked a little strained. He rubbed his warm chest and felt a bit off balance in his heart. This wasn't right. As the Venerable One's sword, he shouldn't have thoughts of his own. He suppressed the feelings of confusion and stood wordlessly by Wenren he. They waited there for 10 days until Bailey Qingmiao finally arrived. Wenren he didn't find this strange. Since the protagonist was traveling alone, she was sure to run into some unexpected situations and be delayed. That was quite normal. Bailey Qingmiao on the other hand was rather embarrassed. Apologies, seniors. On the way here, I passed by a village cursed by ghosts. I was delayed for a few days with exorcising them and failed to meet as per our agreement. A village cursed by ghosts? Wenren he was certain that this was when love interest number 5 debuted, Bailey Qingmiao's little disciple. This little disciple was originally a stillborn fetus. While Bailey Qingmiao was exorcising ghosts, one of the evil spirits had actually not been exorcised and hid inside that fetus, filled with hate for her. 18 years later, he encountered Bailey Qingmiao again, who was by that time at the nascent soul stage, and took her as his shifu, waiting for a chance to eat her soul. Later, Bailey Qingmiao's kindness, innocence, beauty, gentleness, and other virtues moved the ghost cultivator. Afterwards, he became wholeheartedly willing to be her disciple and hated He Wenzhou for making his shifu cry. He tried to assassinate He Wenzhou and was killed by him instead. After his death, he was exposed as a ghost cultivator, and the female villains took the opportunity to accuse Bailey Qingmiao of colluding with evil. The reason he existed was probably to give He Wenzhou a better excuse to mistreat the female lead. Wenren he didn't really worry about these small details. None of these things would be a problem anyway if Bailey Qingmiao didn't love He Wenzhou anymore. The three of them entered the ice plains. To let Bailey Qingmiao find the snow flame her own way, Wenren he put a tracking spell on her and told her to wander around randomly in the endless field of ice. He and Yin Hanjiang just had to keep an eye on her from afar. Bailey Qingmiao's cultivation was low, and even with the flame feather cloak protecting her, she was still so cold that her face was turning purple, struggling arduously through the frost and snow. On the other hand, Yin Hanjiang was at body unity stage and had drunk Wenren he's blood. Moreover, Wenren he also provided him with his own spiritual energy now and again. Even after several days, his face was still flushed and his condition had also improved significantly. It was a sad comparison to make with Bailey Qingmiao. Watching Bailey Qingmiao's movements, Yin Hanjiang opened his mouth several times wanting to ask something but always held himself back in the end. In this way, they followed her for 5 months. As Bailey Qingmiao endured the harshness of the ice plains, she managed to raise her cultivation to the peak of foundation establishment, and would only need to use a core formation cultivation manual to raise to another cultivation stage. However, she still found no trace of the snow flame. Wenren he also didn't expect to waste this much time in the ice plains. Puzzled, he said, "This shouldn't be. The snow flame is destined to belong to Bailey Qingmiao. Why hasn't it appeared yet? He thought back to the story and realized that the current time now aligned with the book's progression, just around the time Bailey Qingmiao would have found He Wenzhou sucked empty by Shu Yanyan, and took him to find the cure. In the book, Bailey Qingmiao hadn't had the flame feather cloak. Her limbs were frostbitten after 3 days of being in the ice plains, and all her spiritual energy was going towards protecting He Wenzhou, as she crawled across the ice with him on her back. When she was on the verge of freezing to death, a ball of flame appeared before her. She reached for it with all her remaining strength and caught that flame, tears of relief flowing from her eyes. Could it be that she has to be near death to see the snow flame? Wenren, he mused. The devil Venerable was a man of action. With that thought, the flame feather cloak on Bailey Qingmiao's body vanished and appeared in his hand. The merely Foundation establishment girl was instantly left shivering from the cold. Seeing this, Yin Hanjiang opened his mouth again. Wenren, he saw his expression and said, "You've been holding off on saying something all this time. What is it? This Venerable One orders you to say it." With Wenren He's order, Yin Hanjiang was more at ease and asked, "Doesn't the Venerable One favor Bailey Qingmiao? So why? Why does it seem like you don't like her at all? Why does it seem like you'd be fine with her freezing to death? Who told you I liked her?" Wenren, he felt that it was very important to clarify this matter. He didn't want Yin Hanjiang to misunderstand things like in the book. He poked Yin Hanjiang in the forehead. "This Venerable has deduced the workings of fate and realized that I have a debt to Bailey Qingmiao's previous incarnation for helping me enter the Dao. In this life, I have to help her ascend. That's why I'm helping her." This subordinate now understands. For some reason, a weight was taken off Yin Hanjiang's chest. He pointed to Bailey Qingmiao and said, "But Miss Bailey is going to freeze to death." "It doesn't matter, Wenren," he said. "There are so many cultivation paths in existence. If she dies, she can cultivate as a ghost. She doesn't necessarily need to cultivate the righteous path." Yin Hanjiang thought for a moment and nodded. The Venerable One's words were as reasonable as always. End chapter.